Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Detective Comics 1027. This is a oversized anthology issue that came out for $10. And there's various stories written by various people, same with the art. We have Blowback by Peter J. Tomasi, pencils by Brad Walker, Andrew Hennessy on inks, Nathan Fairbairn colors, Rob Lay letters. The Masterclass, Brian Michael Bendis, David Marquez artist, Alejandro Sanchez colors, Josh Reed letters. Many Happy Returns by Matt Fraction with Chip Zdarsky art and colors, Aditya Bidikar letters, Rookie by Greg Rucka, Eduardo Risso art and colors, Tom Napolitano letters, Ghost Story by James Tynion IV with art by Riley Rossmo, Ivan Placencia colors and world design letters, 4 by Kelly Sudiconic, John Romita Jr. pencils, Klaus Janson inks, Arif Prianto colors, Troy Terry letters, Odyssey by Marv Wolfman, Emanuela Lupacino did the pencils, Bill Sienkiewicz did the inks, Jordi Belair colors, Carlos Mangul letters, Detective Number 26 by Grant Morrison with Chris Burnham artist, Nathan Fairbairn colors, Steve Wands letters, Legacy written by Tom King with art by Walt Simonson, Laura Martin colors, John Workman letters, as always by Scott Snyder, Ivan Reyes pencils, Joe Prado inks, Marcelo Miolo colors, Tom Napolitano letters, Generations Fractured by Dan Jurgens, writer and artist, Kevin Nolan finished art, Hi-Fi colors and world design letters, Brian Cunningham editor. A gift by Mariko Tamaki with Dan Mora artist, Tamara Bonvillain colors, Tom Napolitano letters. I have the Jim Lee cover. It's a variant with Scott Williams and Alex Sinclair. Alright, the first story, Blowback. The art's pretty standard for Brad Walker. It's good. The Man-Bat looks really cool in there in that flashback. Batman's in a death trap and trying to figure out who did it. It's an okay story. It's just super short. Could have been a good one-issue story. And unfortunately, that is a theme with any of the good stories in here. Next up, we have the Masterclass. It's more Bendis nonsense talking. Everybody has to talk all the time. The Bat family all happens to find this dead guy, and the story was stupid. It involves Killer Croc. It was just boring and rambly nonsense dialogue that didn't mean anything. The next story was Many Happy Returns. This is the Matt Fraction article. And of course, it's a Joker story where, of course, the Joker's in love with Batman. They've taken the dichotomy of the good guy, Batman, and the evil villain, and turned it into a love story some time ago. I don't know why the obsession Joker has to be a love story. It would have been more interesting in a different way. This is just lazy, and this story is stupid. Next, we have Rookie. This is a Greg Rucka story about a young woman who becomes a police officer and sees all the corruption. It's a little bit of an anti-police message early on in the story, but it ends up being an okay tale. The art's not my favorite. I don't like it at all. I think it's kind of trash, but the story's okay. After that, we get the Ghost Story. This one was written really well. It's James Tynion IV, so it's a pretty solid story about Dead Man teaming up with Batman and Robin when Dick Grayson was Robin, and they have to stop a guy that's called the Spectre Collector who tries to eat ghosts. The story was fine. The art is horrific trash, though. Everybody looks like nightmare fuel. It's disturbing. And interspersed are little pinup pages where there's no dialogue. They're not related to the stories. They're just art pieces. Next, we have 4, which was a waste of John Romita Jr.'s pencils and Klaus Janson's inks. And this is about Bruce Wayne talking to a guy named Mr. Steele that can make and break deals, and he's threatening Bruce. It was dumb. It was a pointless story that goes nowhere. Odyssey was after that. It was a story about Bruce trying to recover a ship called the Odyssey that was sank during his grandfather's time during the beginning of World War II, and it's supposed to be filled with a bunch of art and stuff like that, but it turns out it wasn't quite what it appeared. This was a really good story. Marv Wolfman's a good writer. This, again, would have made a good one-shot story if they had given it more time, because it actually is coherent beginning, middle, and end, and there's adventure in this. And it would have been nice to explore the characters a little more, because some of them are descendants of characters like Slam Bradley that were around a long time ago in the Golden Age, and it would have been really cool to see that. But instead, they kind of ham-fistedly wedged that story in the middle of the issue, and I think that was really disappointing. Next, we get a story called Detective 26. This is about a guy that decides to dress up as the Silver Ghost, and it's about him going out to fight crime, but turns out that he's a little late to the game, and he just suddenly gives up. The time on this one is a little weird, because they show him watching a black and white TV, but then you see like a 1920s Roadster, and everybody's dressed like it's the 40s, but that size of TV didn't really exist yet, so I don't really know what that's all about. He should have been listening to the radio instead of watching television, and it implies that this takes place during the Golden Age Batman, so I thought that one had potential, but it was dumb. dumb and kind of pointless. It doesn't go anywhere, and the guy gives up first sign of problems. And there were already other heroes out there that were mentioned, so when he sees one, why would he just suddenly quit? Because he referenced other ones. It was dumb. Then we get the Tom King story where Batman fights Dr. Phosphorus, and it ends up costing him dearly. And this was just more nonsense babble from Tom King and his weirdo therapy journals. It's a waste of Walt Simonson's art. The story is pointless, and it's lazy, and it's just another Death of Batman story that we've seen a million times, and it was done a lot worse than most. After that, we get an interesting story about Batman. It's called As Always by Scott Snyder, and it's about Jim Gordon and his relationship with Batman, and how Batman has to run off to fight some world-ending event, and he just kind of checks in with Batman. He's worried about him. It was an okay backup story, not really anything that would be a showcase piece. The story that follows that is Generation Shattered. This is a lead-in to one of the new spin-off books in which Batman goes to fight some guys on Halloween, and something weird happens, and he experiences like a temporal change, and things are rewritten, so the past is altered, and he's in more like the Golden Age, and he encounters Commandy, and that leads into Generations Future State #1. This probably should have been at the back of the book, but at best it's a decent story. It's Dan Jurgens, but he doesn't have enough time to really elaborate well enough for this to be as interesting as it should be. The art's solid though, because Jurgens is a solid artist. He hasn't lost his touch. So that was a decent story. I didn't hate that one, and it had some interesting ideas there that could have been explored more in a regular issue. Lastly, we have A Gift by Mariko Tamaki and Dan Mora. A little too much pinks in this one. I didn't really understand the point of that, but this one seems to be a lead-in for Detective Comics where a police officer gets injured in a fire, probably killed, but Batman manages to save his partner. It was boring. It was very boring, actually. So this book was real hit and miss. It absolutely was not worth $10. The few good stories should have been their own standalone issues. These anthology books are really weak because of that. There's not one story that has time to get fleshed out. It doesn't have any impact. These are just anthologies thrown together with a bunch of old backup stories that are lazily written and have no cohesive message. There's nothing in here except a bunch of little slice of life stories that mean nothing. Some of the stories would have been great single issues, but instead they just wedge them all in here, and they don't have time to really explore the themes or make the characters interesting or anything like that. This is a waste of money. There's 2 decent stories in here, and they don't justify the cost of the book. There's a couple of mediocre ones, but overall I don't think anything in here is worth $10. As a whole, it's more miss than hit, and I think they wasted a lot of talent putting together a bunch of backup stories that could have been put in an annual somewhere. It's very forgettable. It's really lazy waste of paper and space that could have been devoted to one big mega story and made it an actual event that would have been much more memorable. So I'm not going to recommend this unless you can find it in a dollar bin, because it's not worth $10. Not even close. So I regret my purchase, but the cover does look pretty cool. It's Jim Lee. Some of the art is pretty solid, but like I said, too many of the stories are just boring, lazy backups. This was just a cash grab. It's not worth the money. Don't pay that much for it. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel in other ways, links to my Patreon, Streamlabs, and Teespring store are in the description. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.